Hi, my name is Tim. I'm Senior Application Specialist at HCR Soft. In today's webinar, we will have a look at Custom Tools Administration. There will be a Q&A session at the end to let you follow the presentation better. Francois is not with us today. He's on vacation. I expect the webinar to take somewhere in the range of 35 minutes, and the webinar is being recorded as always and will be made available online later on. And just another word of caution, I have my family at home on vacation, so I hope we will have an interruption-free webinar, but let's see. Okay, let's get started. During this webinar, I'll talk about profiles, users, user groups, permissions, and script. The user interface in general will also be explained in more detail. The first thing to do, or to do at some point, is to log in as admin and get custom tools ready for work. This will be to create or import a profile, for instance. Next is to plan ahead, and this often means that you need to create user groups and setting correct permissions on the profile and database. Then you need to create users and add these to the user groups. During creation of users, there is a process to follow, and as with everything else, I'll show this in detail for you. Then it is time to test the configuration that you made. In this webinar, this will not include testing the profile functionality, only that users can log in and making sure they only have needed permissions. So let's have a look at our company users. Our human resources are very strict that new employees follow alphabetical order. I like that. So we have some designers, power users, dictionary, admins, and administrators. Based on these, we have some different rules. So the management, on the other hand, they have rules as to who can do what on a group base, and we do not deal with individuals in management. At this point, we do not get deeply into the permissions, but I have some slides in PowerPoint to back this up in a few minutes. But the designers can use a profile in SolidWorks, that is. They will not be able to make edits to the profile, and they will not be able to do anything on the database, like adding a script and so on. Then we have some power users who can use the profile, of course, and they will also be allowed to edit profile. We will get into a bit more detail on that. The power users can also delete files. They can log in to the administration and manage users and user groups. Then we have a group called dictionary admins, who is going to be in charge of managing the dictionary. But in doing that, they can actually also use custom tools in SolidWorks. So maybe we need to address an issue there. I'm not entirely sure. And then we have some administrators who, of course, can manage everything. But first, it's time to get visual to show how this is done. So let's get it on. I will start up my remote desktop because I'm going to work off a server. And that opened on a different screen. I will just bring that in. So the first I'm going to do is to open up the Custom Tools administration, and let me just make this slightly smaller. Then I'm going to create a new database, because oftentimes this is what you're going to do. So I will create a database, call that permissions, and I'm going to create a profile. The profile name can be arbitrary, you can call it anything you want, and from this window is where you can define what type of profile you want. You can import or create an empty profile, you can create our machinery or demo profile, or you can choose to import a profile. From the import, you can select the profile that you have been sent, or you can actually go and select different other earlier competitor tools and convert those profiles into a custom tools profile. But I'm just going to import this one. Go next and finish. So now I will be able to log in as admin, and this is my database now. So from here I can start adding users, and I can add groups, of course, and that is actually what I'm going to do now. So for the users, let me just find the list. Okay, so I have a bunch of users. I'm going to create all of them. So Albert will need to have the CustomTools profile, and I'm just going to copy paste that downwards. Now you can set the password, or you can leave the password empty. That is entirely up to you. When we define to use a profile, in this case, we need to have use and read for it to make any sense, and we prompt you for setting use and read on the user. So we go ahead and say yes and hit OK. And we do that again, this time for Benny. So I just take one user from each group. And yes. Then I have one more user. That is for the dictionary admins. So that is Christine. Yeah, and OK. And then we have the designated administrator, and that is Doyle. Yes, and OK. So now I took care of the users. We do install some default users. John and Mark are not part of my company, so I can choose to delete these two. And I do have some different user groups as well, so I don't want to have any. I will just delete these. And actually I'm going to keep the designers because I have a designers group in my setup. So just create a new group called Power Users. Let's create one more called Dictionary Admins. And a final one called Administrators. Now it's time to add users to these groups. So I will start with designers, and from the design point of view, my design team is actually Albert, Alex, and Amelia, but I only have Albert defined, so I'm just going to add Albert to this one. For my power users, I have Benny and Bryant, but I only define Bryant at this point, so I will add him here. For dictionary admins, I have only one, that is Christine. And for the administrators, I have Doyle. The admin user is an object we create in the database, and you cannot delete that, but you can change the password. And we probably encourage you to do so in order for people not to log in and make changes that they shouldn't do. But anyway, that should be just about it. So let's test if it's working. I'm going to actually not start the administration. Sorry about that. I'm going to start SolidWorks. So now I want to test if my users are actually working in the profile. So now I'm going to log in as Albert and see what I have access to. So I could create a new part. and I have access to everything that I want from here. If I go to the options, you'll notice that I do not have any options at all. All I can manage is my own user options, and user options is my preferred language of the user interface. It is how I treat file operations. So if I do not want to see a pop-up when I save a file, I can control that from in here. So basically, these are the ones that the user can control. Okay, so let's try and log in as dictionary admin, Christine, just to see if she has access to the database and for the dictionary. So now I'm logging in at Christine, and she needs to have the managed dictionary permission to be able to edit the dictionary. And actually, she already have. I'm a bit surprised why that is the case, but let's have a look at why that is. She shouldn't have, I can tell you. But let's see. If I go into my server again, we have different type of permissions. So for the CustomTools profile itself, when I created the users, we were prompted, do you want to have use and read permission? So to access those, we can go into permissions here. And basically, I do not like to control individuals. So what I often do is I remove all the check marks from the user scope and add them at the user group scope instead, because that makes more sense. It's more easy to manage users that way. So for designers, which is Alex, Albert, and Amelia, they need to have read and use. Otherwise, they are not able to see and use the profile in SolidWorks. I have some power users, that's Benny and Bryant. They need to actually be able to edit the profile, so they need read, use, and then write. Setting the write permission will give them an option to have another tab when they log in to the options in SolidWorks, so they can actually see profile options. Then I have my dictionary admins, read and use. She will be able to read and use the profile, or else she will not be able to make any edits to the dictionary. And then I have administrators, and he will just be able to do anything he wants. No restrictions at all. Set access is meant to set access to different profiles, so you can right click and set as active. That is what that is used for. If you only have one profile, it probably won't make any sense anyway. And delete gives the option to delete a profile. A bit further up, we have permissions on the database level. So this is my database, and if I right click on that one, I have permissions. Permissions on database level has a pretty irritating window. I would really like that we could expand that, but this is how it is. For designers, they should not be able to do anything in terms of administration. So they will have absolutely no rights at all. For the power users, we need to let them manage the user groups. We need them to manage users. We will allow them to delete design data. So what that means is if you search for a file using CustomTools search, you will have the option to delete the file physically from the hard drive. And then we need them to make some other changes. So we need to give database administrator rights to them as well. And that is all we need. We don't want them to manage any scripts. And I will get into a greater detail on all of these in a PowerPoint in a few minutes. Oh, I forgot. I also have the dictionary admins, of course, and the dictionary admin should have managed dictionaries. And then I have the administrator, Mr. Doyle, who can do anything he would like. So basically, by doing this, we are giving him full administrative rights. Okay. If I go back and then try to log in as a different user, let's log in as Christine. Now, Christine is going to manage the dictionary. So she has this database options tab, and database administrator permission on the other screen. This one is the one setting this window active. So she can manage the translation options and note templates. Notice that there is not anything else in this list, only 2 options. And then she have user options, so she can manage her own settings. I'll try and log out and log in with a different user by doing this. It might not work, so sorry if I need to close SolidWorks again. This time I will log in as a power user, and that is then Benny. If I can spell. So now I should be logged in as Benny. And if I go to my options, I should have quite a few options in here. I have the profile option, so I can change or modify a lot of the settings that are in the profile. And this is how you are dictating how users can do and see whatever they want. I think I made him the power user, so that means if I go into the search, I can find a file, and I should have delete file. And delete file will actually let me delete the file off the hard drive as well, if I have the correct permission set to delete design data, that is. Okay. The power user, that is Benny, he will not be able to manage any script. So now I'm going to log in to the CustomTools administration. Here I cannot see the database, so I need to activate that. Let me do that really slow again. So I can right click and I can register a database. If for some reason I do not see it in the list, I can register a database. And then I should be able to log in as Benny. Similar, if I want to unregister a database, I can right click and unregister. And this is going to remove it from the list. It will not delete the database at all. So if I log into the permissions, let me refresh, then I can see different aspects because I have a power user called Benny. Now, Benny can manage users and groups, but he should not be able to manage script. I think he can, but I'm not entirely sure. No, he cannot. So everything seems to be okay from this point of view. Now, to make it really confusing, I'm going to log out. And I'm going to log in as a designer with no rights at all. So if I log in at Albert, you will notice that the tree is significantly shortened in here. Albert can actually only manage himself from in here. He cannot do anything. He can refresh. He may have the need or urge to try and create a profile, but he will fail. So the permissions are working in that regard. Also, if I log out again and log in as Doyle, Doyle will have all permissions. So from the manage script, I should be able to go in and add a script. So I can add a new script and then check that in. So he will be able to do so. And this is how you are going to set up. And this is why I say plan ahead when you create your profile or your setup. So I think that is just about it. Yeah. Okay. Back to PowerPoint. So I am not a fan of death by PowerPoint, but today I'll make an exception. So the next 18 slides will be really fun. It's time to test everything and make sure that users can log in and have the right permissions. And we already did that, so everything is good. But what is the right permissions? Well, basically we have database permissions as listed on the screen. And if I go one by one and try and explain a bit more in detail. We have the managed user groups. If a user or group has this enabled, and I do want you to consider using groups over users. So don't ever set properties or permissions on a user, do it on group level instead. The following permissions are then given. Manage user groups, can create user groups, can edit user groups, can delete user groups. They cannot add users to a group unless manage users are also selected. So most time you will probably have manage user group and manage users both. So the manage users will give the permission to create or modify users, delete users, and reset user passwords. They cannot assign users to a group unless managed user groups are also selected. And this is going to be like, I'm not sure how to say that, it's interconnected with each other. So all the properties has some kind of relation with others. So you cannot set one property or one permission and then assume that it's going to inherit the lower hierarchy. This is not how it's working. So if something is not working, you may need to add a bit more permission. Really difficult to make a webinar about and even to explain. If database permission is managed profile, a user can set as active, delete a profile, rename a profile, and edit the profile. Import settings is currently not in use. It is going to support import of export profile, import of batch conversion rules, properties, and so on. If you know PDM import, it's going to be basically the same. We are going to allow to import smaller portions of your profile to a new profile. For that to work, we also have an export setting, and this is not currently implemented either, but it's going to be a part of the product at some point. Delete design data. Yeah, I showed you already. If a user has this, he or she can actually delete files from the hard drive from the CustomTools search window. And I have made a caption, use with caution, because we have seen that people are doing that and then they complain that, hey, suddenly my file is gone. And this is actually intended behavior. So make sure that you know what you're doing. Managed dictionaries will allow a user to add a dictionary language, edit a dictionary language, delete a language, add new dictionaries, edit those, and delete those. And they will also have an option to add node templates, edit templates, and delete node templates. I'm not going to get into big detail about what these different elements of the profile are. I mean, we have already made some webinars earlier about all of these. If user has database administrator, he or she can select dictionary default language, set a database timeout, add attributes, edit attributes, or delete attributes, and also add, edit, delete node templates. a system administrator will be able to select the dictionary default language, set a database timeout, add, edit, and delete attributes, and then add node templates, edit, delete node templates, and actually delete the entire database. The manage script is going to allow user to add, edit, or delete scripts. Then we have some profile permissions, and these are pretty basic. It's read, use, write, set access, and delete. If a user has read, then he or she can see the profile. If the user has use, then he or she can use the profile and modify its own user settings in the options. Write will allow you to modify most options in the profile. You cannot add attributes, but you can modify the file conversion, you can modify or define, print, export, everything else. Set access is going to allow a user or a group to set active profile for other users. And delete is going to give the permission to delete a profile completely. The permissions are in many cases depending on each other, so plan ahead and try the settings prior to unleashing the power to the user. If you are a single user, most likely you are using admin account anyway with full permissions to everything, but actually we do not recommend this at all. We encourage you to use your own login. So I have made this slide where if you want to delete a profile, a user must have profile permission, read, use, and delete, and then database permission, system administrator. So there is no one single permission who is going to control whatever you need. You will need to make like a combination of these to make things work out. Basically, that is all I had to show for you today. And the next webinar is not even planned yet, but it is scheduled to be on Thursday, 15th of, not February, March, same time as today. You need to keep up to date from our webpage or look out for our newsletters where we also announce it. It is going to be a bit later on the month than you are used to because we are this time attending some technical training in the UK to sharpen our skills. I am going to be open for questions when the recording is stopped, but first I want to thank you all for attending this webinar, and I hope to see all of you for the next one. Thank you and have a nice day.
We are in the life-saving business. We kill your routines before they kill you.